This is CPE 233, Lecture 18, even though I know we skipped some lectures here. Yeah, can't get around that Tuesday, Thursday, Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule. So this is really the last topic in this course, which is Intro to Real-Time Programming, and namely, this has to do with interrupts. Okay, interrupts are what make the world go around. They're a part of every embedded system. Not complicated at all, particularly in this course where we're going to take just an introductory approach to it. And so more comments out as we go along. And so the next experiment is experiment 7. A part of experiment 7 is to finish up the final 4 instructions in the instruction set. Those instructions all have to do with implementing and controlling the interrupts. So my approach to this is take a high level as possible to make it intuitive as possible. It is very intuitive, and the idea here is because you're required to implement this, we do have to eventually talk about the low-level hardware details, because you have to implement these instructions and make the interrupts work. But if you do that, man, you're going to be on top of the interrupts, and you will never worry about interrupts ever again. So the interrupts themselves is essentially, it's just a subroutine. It's a special subroutine, but it's initiated by hardware. Now, what we've been doing is using subroutines that are initiated under program control, which is essentially under software or firmware. But these subroutines, special subroutines, initiated by hardware. Okay, massively important topic. It's the basic topic of every embedded systems. Every embedded system design and whatever, and the notion here, this is going to be massively complicated, and there's tools to handle that, but we're just getting an introductory look at this one, and it should be very straightforward for this class. And I still say once you do this, you will be flawless once you hit interrupts on a higher level. So this right here on the left part is the RISC microcontroller. And what you'll see there is every signal on there, except maybe the clock and the reset, have to do with I/O. So they got all the I/O stuff listed there, but the interrupt here, which is not that, which is considered, hang on, which is this right here. It's an external pin on the microcontroller. Now, when I said that these interrupts are subroutines initiated by hardware, part of the initialization process is having the signal on this particular this particular signal is going to be asserted. Okay, and you can see the other parts, the I/O sitting over here, and all this I/O here, and then there's your interrupt sitting right there. Okay, typically this interrupt is going to be connected to some external device, like as simple as possible. I mean, you're going to connect it to a button. So 3 types of I/O, and we've been using programmed I/O here, which means we have using the memory mapped instructions to input data and output data. There's also interrupt-driven I/O, which is what we're going to talk about today, and then later you'll see that there's also direct memory access. So the notion is that this is completely under program control. This is initiated by hardware, so there's a little bit hardware control on it, and this essentially DMA is an issue of it frees up the processor to do more important stuff. And such as transfer a whole bunch of data, something like that. You don't want to be transferring data under program control, essentially because it's just not very efficient. Well, if the CPU is transferring data, that means it may not be able to do other important stuff. So in top level, your computer, what does it do for you? Well, it sits there, generally speaking, and it waits for some input. And then based on that input, it does something, okay? And then it, like, I don't know, maybe outputs something and that type of thing. And this is this is kind of really an embedded system, and it's what we've been working with state machines also. The state machine is just sitting there waiting for you to input something. When you do, it reacts. Okay, so the general embedded systems goals are to make your system responsive. Okay, that means, roughly speaking, if I press a button, I want an immediate response. If there's not an immediate response, I'm going to think, wow, this thing sucks, and I'm not going to buy it, and et cetera, et cetera. So it needs to be responsive. Generally speaking, I want to get the throughput high on this thing, meaning I want the processor to always be doing meaningful stuff, which means having a high throughput on this. Now, sometimes that's not possible, but when it is possible, I want the processor to be doing important things. So a reduced power consumption is always a consideration, which is common with interrupts. And you've seen this on your phone, where if you don't touch your phone, it goes dark to save energy. Then you touch your phone and it suddenly wakes back up. Absolutely an interrupt application on this one. And more importantly, with any system, you want to design the system as minimally as possible to get the job done. Okay, so I can design anything with a supercomputer, but that would just be total overkill. But then again, I don't want my processor so weak and so unable to handle throughput that it's just sitting there waiting half the time, and lots of response times on this one. So well beyond the scope of this class, but you want the processor as little as it can be, as fast, as slow as it can be, and still get the job done. So embedded systems, it's really hard to make generalizations about this, but generally speaking, you want to keep the throughput high, and that means you want the processor to be doing meaningful things when there are meaningful things to do. Okay, oftentimes you'll see in embedded systems there's not anything meaningful to do. Okay, so that means if you have a processor that spends most of its time doing unmeaningful stuff, you may want to buy a cheaper and less powerful processor. So generally speaking, you want your embedded system to be always doing good, meaningful things, but more importantly, the design goal is to make sure your microcontroller is not doing stupid stuff when there's something really important that needs to be done. Okay, so stupid stuff generally has low throughput. Number one. Number two is I always use the example, if the guy's heart needs restarting, you don't want to be doing something stupid. You need to go right away and get that guy's heart restarted. Yeah, so generally speaking, you want to keep the embedded system processor busy, but not so busy that the response time takes a hit. Okay, if your response time takes a hit, you might have to bump up the processor or get some hardware to do some of the work for you. So there's two approaches to doing things in digital land. You can do it via the microcontroller, or you can do it via some external hardware. And this is the design consideration beyond the scope of the course, in that the processor can do anything. It's super generic and can do anything, or doesn't necessarily do it well. Okay, so if it doesn't do it well enough for you, you might want to put some external hardware in there to do the job for you. I think the good example is like a floating point unit. Okay, well, I can code floating point with RISC-V, but the problem is it's just horrifically inefficient, and it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of memory to do that. It might be better to, if I have a floating point operation, to send it off to external hardware such as a floating point unit, and have that, and tell the hardware go, and then have that hardware tell me it's done when it's done doing what it needs to do. Okay, and the idea here is when it is done, it is going to tell me it's done. I don't want to keep asking, hey, are you done? Hey, are you done? I want the processor to tell me, hey, it's done. And that's really the typical model of an interrupt. It's some external thing telling you, hey, something needs to happen. Typically like signaling, like I am done doing what you asked me to do. Come and get the result. So yeah, so there is some external control of these external devices, but it's not 100% under program control. And the issue is I can tell the hardware, the external hardware, to go do something, and then the processor can go off doing meaningful things. So it's kind of a big co-processing thing. And you got two processors working on different stuff at the same time, but they're synchronized and they get the job done. They're speaking to each other on this one, communicating such that, hey, go work, hey, I'm done working, etc. Yeah, so it's a huge embedded system design issue. We have two ways to input stuff, and essentially we've been using programmed I/O, which is the memory mapped I/O and all that stuff. And essentially what that means is I'm going to do polling, and that means I have to keep asking the device, hey, do you have input for me? Do you have input for me? Okay, the act of asking that device over and over again is a waste of time, because typically speaking, you've got a microcontroller operating at a nanosecond level, and this device, and maybe a human button press or something, and that's working on maybe like tens of millisecond levels. So generally speaking, if you're polling, you're wasting a lot of time. You're not doing anything. Your throughput is going to take a hit on that one. So instead of asking, hey, device, do you need help? It's better to have the device tell me, hey, hey, microcontroller, I need help. And that's really the heart of the interrupt. Instead of me asking the device whether it needs help, it's the device telling me, the microcontroller, that it does need help. And it's going to tell me that via this interrupt pin right there. Okay, so this is the classic polling routine, and so the idea here is, yeah, there's some I/O up here, all that good stuff. What I'm doing is inputting the buttons, and then I'm masking one of the buttons, and then I'm seeing if that button is pressed or not. If it's not pressed, I'm gonna go jump to poll and look again. And so I'm going to keep looking at this thing until a button is pressed. If I get in this little loop here, this is a polling loop, it is stuck forever. I cannot get out of that thing until a button is pressed. Which is, look, it's kind of fine, unless, of course, there's some other device out there that needs help, because that other device is not going to get the attention it needs because it's stuck in this little polling loop here. Okay, and that's the idea. So in the end, polling, it has a really bad reputation. Polling is bad and all this stuff. Well, it's not really bad. It's just bad in the sense that I don't want to be polling if there's a chance that there's some other device out there that's going to need help. And so this is a very simple, straightforward introductory class. And what's going to happen is you'll often see that we don't have a lot of tasks out there, and those tasks don't need a lot of help, so it's going to be okay to poll. And you're going to see the examples come up, which are basically polls on that. So don't really freak out about this. And once again, polling, not bad. It's just bad if you've got something more important to do, because I'm stuck in this polling loop until that event I'm looking for actually happens. So interrupts in general, I'm hoping that I can avoid polling with these things, so maybe increase the system throughput on this. But more importantly, I want the device to tell me it needs help, and hopefully with that I can reduce the response time. Okay, I don't have to keep asking a device, hey, do you need help? Which is not a big issue, but if I have 20 devices that I have to ask to need help, well, it's going to take me a while to get to the device that actually does need help. So interrupts essentially are a subroutine that is initiated by hardware call. It's called an interrupt because the normal processing is, quote, interrupted, and you go do something else, and that thing you go do is referenced as the interrupt handler or the interrupt subroutine. Okay, so the requirements of this thing is you just got to understand how the interrupt architecture works. It's one of the first things you look at anytime you pick up a new processor. It's not complicated, but it is new material. It's different per any processor. For RISC-V, it's just not a super big deal once you get to know it. But there are a couple ins and outs of this thing, and you're required to implement it. So you have to understand it both at an operational level and at an implementation level. And I think I'm going to stop here for this video, and I'll jump in on the next one.